Okay, well, I'm going to start. I know people are going to be coming in as we start our awesome empowerment webinar series, the seventh of our empowerment webinar series. Hi, I'm Christina Gordon. I am the CEO of the Women's Foundation of Boston, and thank you for joining us today for our seventh Women and Girls Empowerment webinar series, hosted by the Women's Foundation of Boston. I want to make sure everybody knows, which I'm sure you do, that this will be recorded for those that can't attend so they can watch it later. So I am so thrilled to be moderating today's fascinating and inspiring webinar titled The Power of Owning Your Worth. We are so excited to have our amazing advisory council member, Chandra Clark, with us today, and I will introduce her in just one second. But first, I want to make sure that for those of you who are new to our organization, the Women's Foundation of Boston economically empowers Greater Boston women and girls. And we do that through funding and creating high impact leadership and economic programs in partnership with nonprofits that only serve Greater Boston women and girls. We were founded about 5 years ago in 2017. And the reason why we were founded is we recognized that there was a massive underinvestment in women and girls nationally as well as locally. We discovered that only now, recently updated, 1.9% of all US philanthropic giving is directed towards women and girls, serving nonprofits, 1.9%. And of that, 40% is sent overseas. So myself and the other co-founders were really motivated to address this shocking philanthropic void. And we're businesswomen. So we apply our investment and strategic lens to everything we do, creating and managing this organization, and more importantly, to our granting. We have an exclusive focus on economic empowerment, which is very, very intentional, because if you raise a woman's economic status, all of her life variables improve, as well as for her children. And women also reinvest 90% of their incomes back into their families and communities. So there's a multiplier effect when we grant towards women and girls. So we have committed close to around $3 million in grants to women and girls serving nonprofits since our inception, and we continue to grow and grow every day. We have impacted over 10,000 women and girls in Greater Boston by empowering them to become financially independent agents of their own lives. We are predominantly an all-volunteer organization. We have about 120 high-powered women and men volunteering for us to really move our mission forward. We have become the go-to organization for women and girls issues, and we are proud to fill that important role. And now, I'd like to introduce our fantastic speaker. I have known Chandra for about a year, but I feel like I've known her my whole life. She is a wonderful, wonderful, amazing woman, and we are so thankful to have her as part of our advisory council. She's done much, much more than that. Chandra is the executive director of VHL Alliance. It is a nonprofit that is dedicated to providing research and education and support to improve the diagnosis and treatment and quality of life for those who are affected by von Hippel-Lindau syndrome. I hope I said that right. For 18 years, Chandra has served in the nonprofit space in leadership roles to support the advancement of underserved population. Her passion lies in advocacy for equity in healthcare and education and economic access, which really aligns with us as well. Chandra has a very diverse professional background. The best part about Chandra is that she's on our advisory council, which we love. Prior to joining VHLA, she served many, many roles, including Director of Community Outreach at Big Brothers Big Sisters in Kansas City, where she successfully launched their first community outreach department, their post-secondary education initiatives, and workforce development programs for youth, which really has gained national exposure. Chandra has a master's degree, a bachelor's degree from University of Missouri, and is a graduate of the Central Exchange Emerging Leadership Fellowship Program. She has been honored to receive many awards and recognitions, including the Next Gen Leaders from Kansas City Business Journal, the Young Athena Leadership Award, Rockhurst Faber Young Alum of the Year from Rockhurst University, Top Connector in Education and Entrepreneurship and Most Influential Woman in Kansas City Business. Wow. In her spare time, she enjoys traveling, writing, reading, and sharing invaluable moments with her 20-year-old daughter, Jada.
Yeah.
And now, really, let's bring Chandra in on the conversation, because she's really why you're all here. And we are so looking forward to her sharing her wisdom, her inspiration with all of you and me as she talks about the power of owning your worth. And now I'm going to turn it over to Chandra.
Thank you, Christina. And I want to just say a heartfelt thank you to the Women's Foundation of Boston. I am honored to be a part of your organization and to support your mission. And it is just truly a privilege to be here. So today I will be talking about the power of owning your worth, and the concept is bloom. So right now I will begin by sharing my screen. So as Christina mentioned, today's webinar is really about how do you focus on the power of owning your worth. This is meant to be a very soulful conversation. And when I say soulful, I mean food for the soul. So today I will be sharing practical tips to help those who are in attendance today to think about next steps in their career development, but also focusing on the core of what it really means to own your power and own your worth. And in essence, that means that you're blooming and you're evolving into the next phase of your life. So today we'll talk about cultivating a vision to thrive in both your personal and professional life, the connection between positive self-esteem and career development, celebrating your own unique gifts and talents, and creating your 6-word legacy for success. So what does it mean to bloom? To bloom means to evolve into one's potential. So I'll begin with sharing a little bit about my story. I am the executive director of the VHL Alliance, which is a nonprofit organization, and our passion is really focusing on supporting the quality of life for those individuals who have been impacted by the rare disease VHL, also known as von Hippel-Lindau. I am an author. Each of you who attend today should receive an affirmations journal that I'm really blessed to have been able to pour my heart and soul into, and I'm in the process of writing another book. I am a speaker. I really enjoy going out and sharing my story, especially with young women and children, because I think it's important to pour into the lives of the next generation. I'm a leadership coach, and I am also a model. The other side of my story is that I am an adult survivor of childhood abuse. I am divorced. I was a single parent for 12 years. I am a committed thriver. And so what that means is that I am on a lifelong journey of trauma recovery. And I am a passionate advocate of those who have been victims of abuse at every form, specifically women and children. And the reason why I share both sides of my story is I think it's important that when we're talking about your vision for your life and career development and your worth, we have to look at who we are as a whole person. We cannot separate those aspects. And so in giving this presentation, this is not at all to say that I have it all together. I do not. I am on this journey with you. And every day I have to show up with every part of my story as I am determined to move forward and thrive in every aspect of my life. And my hope is that the information that I share today with you will also encourage you to do the same and continue to do the same. So my wake-up call was that I realized that feelings of unworthiness and rejection were blocking my personal and professional growth. So as I shared earlier, I am a survivor of childhood abuse. And so what that means is that I have a lot of areas in my life where there are traumatic blocks. And it has definitely affected the way that I see my worth and my value, especially in relation to my work. And I realized that as I was going through this transformation about 2 years ago, realizing that it was time for me to move into the next phase of my career, that there were definitely some areas where I just didn't feel like I was good enough. And it's two components to that. There's the scientific component that you have been impacted by trauma. So there are parts of your brain that have to be reconditioned. And there's that spiritual component of the things that we tend to carry because of our lived experiences. And so as I was in a place of realizing that I wanted to go to the next phase of my career, I really had to go into this place of a soul awakening to say, who are you? What are you carrying? What is blocking the way that you see yourself? One of my mentors actually said to me that I needed to do the work to see myself differently because how I saw myself was not the way that other people saw me. And that was a transformative moment for me because I had to realize that in order for me to really move forward, I had to take ownership of my life. So in relation to you owning the power of your worth, today we're going to talk about your vision for your life and how your vision for your life relates to your career and how at the core of both of those is your worth. So how do you feel about yourself? So your vision. Without a vision, where is the focus? So if you don't have a vision for your life, how are you able to focus? How are you able to move forward every day if you really don't have an idea of where you want to go? So take a moment and think about what is your vision for your life? Do you have a picture? If you were able to paint this ideal picture of what your life would look like, what would it be? Are you able to really put into words where you want to go and how you want to leave your legacy in the world? If this is something that you haven't done, I really encourage you to do it because it will have a phenomenal impact on how you show up each day. And part of the journey of creating your vision is don't ever allow yourself to lose your childhood sense of wonder. When you think about children take risks. They're not afraid to go into areas, especially those areas they've been told not to go into. They're not afraid to do new things, to meet new people. They're not afraid to ask the hard questions. They come into the world with this type of confidence that somehow they will be okay. So as you take a step back and you think about creating a vision for your life, you want to go into that childlike part of you that wonders and explores and imagines and dreams and believes that there is more and that they can achieve anything. So also in this vein of childlike, remember in school when you would do the 4 W's and the H? Well, I did a little concept on that, kind of switching around the W's. But you want to begin creating your vision with asking yourself, who am I? Who am I? What do I want out of my life? Where do I want to go? When do I want to get there? And how will I get there? And that is a cycle that is really necessary for you to begin to have this conversation with yourself of asking, who am I? And it's something that you will not ask yourself just once. This is something that you need to continually ask yourself. And this is a process that you have to continually be committed to creating. So in relation to your vision, think about what are your dreams? Sometimes we go through things in life where we stop dreaming. You know, there are many of us who really suffered some adverse circumstances. And sometimes we found that as we're moving forward with pursuing our dreams, there are also a lot of roadblocks and hindrances that can actually cause us to be disappointed and lose sight of the fact that we used to have these big dreams for ourselves. But I want to encourage you that you can always course correct and begin to dream again. which relates to what are your aspirations? What do you aspire to be? Who do you aspire to be? How do you desire to impact the world? What are your goals? So it's so important that we have goals for ourselves. And again, in our day-to-day, it can be overwhelming to set goals because a lot of the information about success is that you have to have all of these goals. Well, I encourage you just to start simple. For me, my favorite number is 3. So I focus on 3 goals that I could have actually at the beginning of every year. So now soon we'll be moving into 2022, and I just want to create 3 simple goals that I can focus on. And we also use the concept of the SMART goals, but I encourage you to put your own spin on it. So, you can have those short-term goals that relate to long-term goals, but make sure that it's something that you can measure, that it's attainable, that it's realistic, and that you give yourself a time frame. And I also want to encourage you that if you have to continually modify the time frame to achieve those goals, that is okay also. Another part of your vision is thinking about the fact of what brings you joy. I think now more than ever, especially during this time of still being in this pandemic that has really changed the way that we do life, we really have to think about what brings us joy. So it's not enough to just show up in life and not have joy. And it's not about happiness, because happiness can be short-lived. It really is about joy. And joy is something that is connected to your soul. So how do you tap into those deep parts of yourself to think about what brings you joy and how that then translates into the vision that you have for your life? And another tip is to think about what would you do for free. So for me, I love people. I am passionate about people. I would go out and be a mentor for free. I would go out and do workshops for free. I would coach people for free because I really believe in the power of empowering others and this idea of inspiring hope and healing. So as you think about your own personal vision for your life, take a step back and think about what would you do for free, and then how then you can translate that into monetizing that. But you first have to take the time to think about, what do you visualize? What is this big picture that you have for yourself? So as you begin to look to create your vision, it begins with granting yourself permission. That is a decision that you have to make. No one can make that decision for you. So you begin with permitting yourself to create the vision. You then need to move into a time of reflection. So allowing yourself to really sit and pause and think. And then you move into a place of meditation. So really taking the time to have just those small moments of sitting with yourself and meditating on positive thoughts and positive affirmations and thinking about who you are and what you want to be. As you move out of the stage of meditation, you will then go into designing. So beginning to look at, how can I design my life? How can I lay out and have this life, visualizing this life that I want, but putting it out, creating, which is the next phase, your blueprint. When you think about your vision, you also want to keep it very simple. So you want to first create it in your own language, because this is your life and this is your vision. So it doesn't have to make sense to anyone else. So we often talk about creating vision boards. We can also write things out. I tend to use pictures and sticky notes, but it has to be something that makes sense to you. You want to keep it very simple because, again, with the day-to-day life of managing yourself, if you have a family, a busy job, and other obligations, you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're taking away from yourself. So you want to keep it as simple as possible so that you can really dedicate that time to yourself. You also want to make it visible, because it is something very important scientifically about your eye being able to see what you want related to your vision. And you want to view it daily. So you need to put it in a place that you can visualize it daily, whether it's in your bedroom or in your living room or in an office space, but it has to be in a place where in the bathroom, you can see it for yourself and that your mind is actually making this memory of looking at, oh, this is what I want to do for myself. I love myself. I know that I want to be an author. I know that I want to be a dancer. I know that I can do these things. So you want to make sure that you visualize it. And you also want to celebrate your wins. So none of us, as we think about creating our vision, are starting from scratch. We all have something that we've overcome. We all have something that we've accomplished. We all have something to celebrate. And so it's also important that you keep that in mind as you begin to create your vision. One activity that's really important as you begin to move forward with creating your vision is making a list of at least 10 of your highest accomplishments. And I know that there are people that would say, well, I can't even identify 10. Yes, you can. So I encourage you to start with 10 of your highest accomplishments. And examples of things can be, did you take a job that was a risk for you? Did you take on a new promotion? Did you complete a course? Did you complete a college degree? Did you manage to have a family while you're managing your career? This should be things that are personal and professional and meaningful to you, but you should make a list of at least 10 of your highest accomplishments. And one step to take this further is that you can also make a list of 10 of your highest accomplishments by decades in your life. And I've done this exercise even going back to elementary school, especially when I'm finding myself feeling stuck and I need to remind myself of the power of who I am and my ability to accomplish anything that I can put my mind to. We can always accomplish anything that we put our minds to. So I encourage you to first start with the list of your 10 highest accomplishments and then move into creating a list of 10 by decade. And you will be surprised how invigorating you feel by having it out on paper and knowing that you've really achieved more than you've given yourself credit for. So as we move out of the phase of discussing your vision, it's so important that you look at how far you've come. I have to be honest in sharing personally that I'm such an achiever, and I always have this list of things that I need to accomplish and my next goal instead of celebrating how far I've come. And that actually is a root cause of me needing to do more work on my self-esteem and my self-worth. So I share this to say, it doesn't matter your title, it doesn't matter your salary, it doesn't matter what you have decided you believe to be success. It means that you really have to take the time to look at the most miniature things and look at how far you've come. And then you want to grant yourself permission to glow and to grow. So now we'll move into the next phase in discussing your career. Your career journey is a spiritual experience. And I don't know if we always think about our career journey in this matter, but it is a spiritual experience because your career journey really is something that should be taking you back to the core of who you are. So as you begin to look at your career and what you desire for your career, you want to define your why. You don't want to define your desire for your career. You don't want that to be defined by other people. It really has to be what is meaningful to you. And it is, again, a spiritual experience, meaning what resonates with your soul. Why is this something that I'm passionate about? Why is this something that I can't seem to shake or get rid of? That is so important to you because this is your life and this is your journey. And so your success really lies in defining your why. When we find ourselves in transitions in our careers, it's really powerful to give yourself permission to say goodbye to the people, places, and things that are blocking your growth and development. So change is hard. and change can be icky and awkward and difficult, especially when we found ourselves in situations that seem to be so meaningful and impactful at one time in our life. However, the dynamics have changed. But it's really important for you to give yourself the grace in this space to understand that many things in our life really are based on season. And so when you're finding yourself going to the next phase in your career, it's 9 times out of 10, there are people and places and things that you will have to release. So I'll give a short example here. I moved to Boston, it'll be a year ago in December. I spent over 33 years of my life in Kansas City, where I had a network and a really rich community of relationships, both personally and professionally. But as I began to go on this transition of knowing that it was time for more, I really found myself in a stage of really being uncomfortable for 2 years. I went on 13 job interviews, and every job interview I was told, oh, it's great, but we decided to go another direction. I would ask for feedback and I'd be told, oh, you're great, but just another direction. And I really couldn't understand why the door wasn't opening for me. And one day I had a really heart-to-heart conversation with one of my friends, where she helped me to understand that I was holding on to it too tightly. I knew that it was time to leave, but I had different voices in my ear. I was still focused on how I appeared to everyone else but myself. And I was still looking at things through the lens of how they used to be. And at the conclusion of that conversation with her, I went home and decided I needed to surrender. So I was taking my hands off of needing to find another role in Kansas City. I decided that I needed to take my hands off of what my next phase of my life looked like. And I just needed to decide that I had to let go and just open my soul up to wherever I was being called to go. And in that, giving myself permission, the door opened for me within 3 weeks that I actually secured my next role. So I share that with you to say that that very uncomfortable experience of going through those 13 job interviews and feeling as though I was being rejected and looked over, and it definitely took a toll on my self-esteem. The larger lesson in that was that there were things that I needed to release and let go of before I move forward. So if you are feeling stuck in your career, you owe it to yourself to transition from surviving to thriving. And again, know that if something used to feel so good for you and now it's no longer working, that is a sign that it's time for change. And it's okay if you feel uncomfortable, because it means that you need to grow. So your career journey is really encompassed by your identity. So how do you see yourself? It is a mix of your personal and professional. Do not allow anyone to tell you that they are separate, because they are not. You show up as a whole person. And at the core of that really is about how you believe. How do you see yourself? How do you see your life? How do you see the universe working out opportunities in your favor? Your career is your journey. It is not anyone else's journey. It is unparalleled, meaning it cannot be compared to anyone else's. It is limitless, and that truly means that you can accomplish anything that you put your mind to, and it is a legacy. So it's not just about where you are today. It's not even about where you are tomorrow. But when you think about years from now and your contributions to the world, that is your legacy. So your career is just bigger than where you are now. You have to take the time to really go deeper in understanding how you identify with yourself, how you identify with the world, how you identify with your worth. You have to allow yourself to have your personal and professional show up and not continue to separate them, because it's unfair to try to compartmentalize and put those in a box. And then at the core of that, again, it is about your belief. Are you coming through life with the lens of lack, or are you looking at your life through the lens of abundance? So as you continue to move into the place of reflecting about your career, give yourself the opportunity to think about what your natural gifts are. So those are things, are you a natural encourager? Are you a natural born leader? We all are leaders, but are you next level in how you lead and how you execute? Are you a visionary? You also have to think about your talents. Are you good at writing? Are you good at singing? Are you good at organizing? What makes you marketable? So what really sets you apart from everyone else? Because there is something unique about you. So what makes you marketable? What makes you special? What makes you different? Again, going back to what I said earlier, you have to think about what you've accomplished so far, because your career journey really is about building yourself up, not tearing yourself down. And so you really have to give yourself a reminder of, oh, I've gotten this far and I didn't come this far to stay here. So let me reflect back on all of the wonderful things that I've accomplished, all of the things that I've been able to overcome, all of the goals that I've been able to achieve. And this will help prepare me forward. And at the end of the day, it really is about how you desire to contribute to the world, because that will be your driving force. Also, on those days where you just feel like you're kind of missing the boat and you really can't really clearly articulate your why, remember that there's something that you are contributing to the world, and your desire to stay true to that will also help you continue to move forward. Another part of your career development is really taking the time to ask yourself the question, how do I define success? So is success defined by a title for me? Is it defined by my salary? Is it defined by me working for a certain company or a certain organization? Is it about me feeling joyful? Is it about me ending my day knowing that I've really touched the lives of many people? So it's so important for you to have this conversation with yourself and not to feel bad about how you define your success, but that really goes back to your why. Another important question to ask yourself is, do I measure my worth by my work? And that's just a very honest question that you have to ask yourself, because if you were to not have a career, and if anything were to change and you lost your job tomorrow, you really have to be honest with yourself and say, am I measuring my worth by my work? And if I am, what does that really mean to me? And what does that really mean about how I feel about myself? And I cannot say that there's a right or wrong answer to that. I think it's just more about you being true to who you are. The other part is, are you able to bring your whole self to work? Women have often been told that they're too emotional, or they're too this, they're too much of this, or they're not enough of this. And it's simply not true. And now more than ever, you have the freedom to say, I want to be in a role that allows me to bring my whole self to work. Whether that is the trauma that I carry, whether it's the fact that I really am very empathetic, whether it is that I'm a left brain thinker or a right brain thinker. It's really important that you're able to bring your whole self to work and not be penalized for that. Another question to ask yourself is, do I do what I love? And then the next part of that is, do I love what I do? Because they are separate. And you owe it to yourself to do what you love and to love what you do. And then in this time of self-care and mental health needing to matter more than ever, a question to ask yourself is, am I able to care for myself? How is this affecting me emotionally? How is this affecting me physically? How is this affecting me mentally and financially? So these are all questions that you have to ask yourself as you're going through this phase of career exploration, and also looking at where you are currently and where you want to go. So as you look at the larger picture of your career, think about your career as a table. So I know there's a pyramid image here, but I want you to take the time to think about it as a table. So we should all have the opportunity to sit at the table. And as women, we should continue to create those opportunities to sit at the table. And then there are times that we will be setting the table. So we will be inviting others to come and sit at the table that we once sat at. And then the next phase should be building the table. So you've had this opportunity to sit at the table, and now you've created opportunities for others and you're setting the table. And then the next phase, as you look at your legacy, is I'm building this table. So whether you are building, sitting, or setting the table, you should always be at the table. Your career and your success in your career is also based on your mindset. So questions to continue to ask yourself are, am I coming out of a place of a fixed mindset, or do I have a growth mindset? And it's so important as you think about your success that you're thinking about you have a growth mindset. And think about your mindset, you can always change it. But in this idea of building and setting the table and sitting at the table, you also have to think about, am I allowing myself to go to new tables? Or am I used to being in one area and I'm uncomfortable moving out of that? So take the time to really think about your mindset, and is there a need for you to shift your mindset? Remember that risks are necessary. You have to take them. So just sharing a little bit personally, I had no idea that my next role would be at an organization focusing on rare disease. I've always had a passion for nonprofit. I am definitely a servant leader, but I never saw myself at a rare disease organization, which I'm so blessed and fortunate to be there. But it was a risk. And it was a risk for me to move across the country to Boston and to start a new role in a pandemic. But I can tell you that even though there have been many twists and turns, it was a necessary risk for me in my career. And I share that to say you owe it to yourself to take the risk. And in taking the risk, embrace mistakes because they will come. You will not know everything. You should not know everything. And you need to make mistakes because failure is always an option. And you have to allow yourself the opportunity to fail. And it's not about the safety net. This is about you taking new opportunities. So again, you can glow and grow. And remember that adversity is always a learning opportunity. It may not feel good at the time, but it is necessary for who you are as a leader to endure it and know that you will overcome it. So your career is your brand. So take the time to build meaningful connections, leverage your network, and remember that visibility breeds opportunity. So if people don't know you, opportunities will not come to you. And it's okay for you to build your brand and leverage your network in the manner that works for you. You don't have to be an extrovert. You don't have to be an introvert. It doesn't matter. It means that you have to be strategic enough to allow yourself and position yourself to build your brand, to create and leverage a network, and to be visible because opportunities will come to you. And remember to take risks because you have to venture into the unknown because your career is so much bigger than where you are now. It is also about others and the legacy that you're going to leave in the world. So one quote that I like to use for inspiration is success is liking yourself, liking what you do, and liking how you do it. Next, we'll move into your worth. So more than 80% of the world's population is affected by low self-esteem. So that has to be a staggering statistic, I think, to all of us. And when we think about self-esteem, we have to take the time to define the difference between self-esteem and self-worth. So self-esteem refers to an individual's sense of their value, and self-worth is the internal sense of feeling good enough and worthy of love and belonging. And I can take a moment here to tell you that honestly, I've struggled with both, which is why I'm so passionate about career development, and I'm here with you today. So as you think about your self-esteem and your self-worth, and they definitely interconnect, one question to ask yourself is, how do I show up for myself? So you have your fears and you have your desires, and they are constantly at war. And that is perfectly okay, but it's important that you are honest with yourself to acknowledge that your fears and your desires are constantly at war. So as you think about your worth and you think about your fears, there are many fears that we have, but oftentimes it's the fear of rejection, it's the fear of failure, it's the fear of exposure, and it's the fear of loneliness and isolation. So in rejection, I love to look at these quotes on LinkedIn, and they say, oh, rejection is redirection. And that sounds so good and it feels so good. But when you're going through a job search and you're wanting a certain role and you're wanting to be a part of a certain group and that door doesn't open for you, that doesn't feel good. And it actually takes a toll on your worth and your self-esteem. And it leads you into feeling like a failure, and you can get stuck in your disappointments and be extremely discouraged. And a part of that is also because you feel vulnerable and exposed, and it doesn't feel good for people to see a negative side of you. We always want people to look at the positives. And when we don't allow ourselves to work through those feelings of rejection and failure and exposure, it leads us into a place of isolation and loneliness, because again, we're embarrassed and we're humiliated, which is related to our ego. That if we can look through the lens of our life at our higher selves, it's okay for us to have the fears. We just don't need to stay there. So the other side is that we all desire love. We all want to be loved. We all want to be accepted. We all want to have the freedom to be who we are and be what we were called to be. And we all want to have the desire to belong. And these are things that we should never be ashamed of. And I think that in recent years, there's been more celebration of us being able to acknowledge our desires in the workplace. But for the longest time, especially women, were penalized for having these desires to be loved and accepted and feel free and belong. And that's unrealistic. So I encourage you that if you are a person who knows that these are the desires that you have, take ownership of them and celebrate them, and know that you deserve to be in a role, that those are actually available to you, and that you don't have to change who you are to be in that role. So the key is not to focus on removing the fear. It is allowing what you desire most to be your driving force. So your worth will continually be this battle of internal factors. So again, your fears and your desires, but also your external factors of living in a world that tells you who you should be and tries to define who you are. But notice that these two circles are smaller than the power of you, because you are a powerhouse and you can own every part of your worth by just being authentic and honest enough to identify what the internal factors are that you're working in tandem with, but also external, and allowing them to work in your favor, because you are greater than the sum of both of them. So as you come into a space of looking at your worth, I like to use two terms here, space and grace. Be willing to do soul work. The vision for your life, your career, and your worth is a soul experience. And that means you have to open your heart. And some of us have been through so many experiences that our hearts are not even open to the fact that we have work to do. But you have to open your heart to really go on this journey of exploration. You need to allow yourself to listen to your inner critic. It's not something that you need to get rid of. In fact, you'll never get rid of your inner critic, But what will happen is that you will build up your worth in such a sense that your inner critic will no longer be the dominant voice. You have to acknowledge your needs. We need each other. We're not on an island by ourselves, and we never should be. And so you have to give yourself the space to be vulnerable enough to acknowledge your needs. And you also have to commit to receiving support. So again, going back to the ego doesn't always like to admit that I have needs, I need support, I have soul work to do. But you absolutely have to release your ego so that you can evolve to the next level. And the next side of this is giving yourself the grace to honor your feelings. It doesn't matter if your feelings are good or bad. It means that honoring your worth is loving yourself enough to know I have these feelings that I need to acknowledge. They need to be heard, and I'm going to honor them. You need to be extremely kind to yourself. And this is an area where I can tell you, especially because of my trauma background and not having a great childhood, I have been conditioned to be extremely hard on myself. So being kind to yourself, for those of us who went through very traumatic experiences, will need to be something that you practice and you have to learn and you have to develop. And that also goes into that self-compassion. If you have the ability to be compassionate towards others, you certainly have the ability to be compassionate towards yourself, but you have to make the decision to do so. Do not set a time limit. In this time of exploration, take as long as you need, because a lot of times our realization and our healing process and our journey is multi-layered. And so it's not a quick fix. And it's okay not to set a time limit. You give yourself goals, right, that you want to attain. But in this place of feeling your feelings and doing your soul work, do not set a time limit, because it's something much bigger at work than you in this present space. And embrace vulnerability. Embrace allowing other people to see you in a fragile state, because fragility is actually very beautiful. And it's not something that should be hidden, because the purpose of you going through this place of fragility and vulnerability is actually because you're evolving into the next version of you. So a few tips on how to really continue to build up and cultivate your worth is to journal. I know that we all have busy schedules. And so one tip is to do morning writing. And that could be you wake up, set a timer for 5 to 10 minutes and you journal, or you can do it at night or even midday. But the point is that you need to put your thoughts on paper, because when we keep those thoughts in our head, it's harder to differentiate what is ours and what is someone else's. So journaling is something that will really help you build up your worth. And then the other technique that I recommend is love notes. So getting Post-it notes in your favorite colors and posting them throughout your home. You go, girl. I love you. You're amazing. I'm successful. I'm worthy. I'm deserving. And going back to what I said earlier, it makes a difference when your mind's eye is able to visualize this every day. So in focusing on your worth, you want to make sure that you're allowing yourself to care for your heart, because you put your heart and soul to all that you do. So you want to allow yourself to care for your heart, to practice self-love. Self-love is a practice. To use daily affirmations, so I am statements, and you can keep them simple, 5 to 10. But again, I am powerful, I am worthy, I am loved, I am capable. So you're stating these daily affirmations that are also a part of your self-love practice that is allowing you to care and tend to your heart. Surround yourself with positivity. There's enough negativity. You have enough people that would tell you who you can't be and who you are not. So find your community of just 1 or 2 people that will help build you up and not tear you down. As I said earlier about your ego, get out of your own way. because it's okay for you to be in a place of transition. Transitions are necessary for life, and you don't have anything to prove to anyone else. So make sure that you're not trying to prove anything to yourself by not allowing yourself to receive the support that you need. And remember that your life is a journey and not a destination. So literally you have to take it one day at a time, but at the core, it is how you treat and take care of you. So another quote that I love by Oprah Winfrey is, self-esteem means knowing you are the dream. So moving to the conclusion of our presentation, one thing I like to share is the 6-word legacy. So this is the idea of thinking of your life beginning with the end in mind. So destiny is calling you to do something that only you can do. So what will be your 6-word legacy? I love the 6-word memoir, story, or legacy because you can pack a lot of power into 6 words. So my personal 6-word legacy, I have to, is when I think of the larger picture of the work that I want to do in empowering women and children and really being an advocate for self-esteem and quality of life for all individuals, it is she touched the hearts of millions. But in my day-to-day, when I'm finding myself sometimes having highs and sometimes having lows and really going through this place of my own personal evolution, I also have to think that my story is triumphant over tragedy, beauty for ashes, meaning that my journey is totally different from everyone else's. I've had a lot of tragedy, my own personal tragedy that I have to take ownership of and realize that my triumph will look differently from someone who didn't have those experiences. And that my goal is to really take all of those ashes and make something beautiful out of them that I can contribute to the world. So I share those two personal with you because as you think about your motivation for your day-to-day, I encourage you to think about your 6-word legacy, and you can have more than 2, and it changes over time. But think about the larger picture of what you want to contribute to the world, but then also what your driving force is your day-to-day. I also recommend that if you're finding yourself in a place of needing to build up your self-worth and also in a career transition, please seek out counseling and therapy, leadership coaching. Make sure you have a community of accountability because again, you're not on this journey by yourself. And also build up your personal board of directors. So giving yourself 2 to 5 people that you can go to and just really share your heart with and talk to in times of triumph, but then and also in times of discouragement. And that board of directors can be a mix of peers and mentors and advocates. It could also be organizations like the Women's Foundation and Infinity groups, faith-based groups, whatever you need. But it's so important that you do not allow yourself to sit on an island by yourself. You need people, you need support, and each of us, we are owed that. I also want to provide some recommended reads. So some books that have really been helpful to me throughout my career journey has been Klein. What Got You Here Won't Get You There. When the Scientific Secrets of Perfect Timing, Successful Women Think Differently, Bad Childhood, Good Life, and You Can Heal Your Life. So I encourage you to definitely create a plan where you're listening to at least one audiobook a month or reading one book a month, but have a book that can really help you during the times that you need encouragement, and also just that extra boost as you're thinking about creating this vision for your life. So in closing out, I wanted to remind you, you are never too young, you are never too old. Grant yourself permission to dream and be bold. Never fear the power that lies in your story being told. Be you, because you are always in bloom. please feel free to contact me. I'd love to hear from you. And thank you for your time today.
Wow. Chandra, thank you. That was amazing. I took so many notes. I don't even know where to begin. So luckily I know you, so I can reach out to you quickly. But thank you so much for this amazing webinar. And I'm speechless, really. Just your knowledge and your expertise and your thoughtfulness is really truly almost overwhelming. So thank you. We are out of time, unfortunately. It was good because the content was amazing. I did notice nobody dropped off, so that's great. So I just want to thank Chandra for taking the time out of her busy day. She juggles a lot and sharing her words of wisdom. We are so appreciative to have you here. And before everyone leaves, please take a moment to complete our event survey. It's going to pop up the minute you leave the webinar. And lastly, in the chat box is the link to our donation page. Please consider supporting our mission. And we just thank you all for coming. And of course, I just can't thank Chandra enough for her wisdom. Amazing. Please stay tuned also for our next webinar, which is on November 18th at noon, titled Women in Financial Services, Starting, Growing, and Leading. And this is going to be presented by 5 executive leaders from JP Morgan in New York and Boston. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Chandra. Reach out to us, reach out to Chandra, and have an awesome, awesome day.
Thank you.